Andrew has requested me on Patreon to review the thriller Copycat. Released in 1995, it digs into the fascination a lot of people have of serial killers, both those curious about why they would do such horrific things and those who seek to emulate them. The movie essentially follows four characters: a traumatized psychologist, the serial killer looking for his next victims, and the two police officers investigating his murders. So what did I think of this thriller and its handling of the subject? I think the strongest, most interesting subplot involves the psychologist, Dr. Helen Hudson. Played by Sigourney Weaver, the movie shows the effect that reading and learning about serial killers can have on someone. She also has a traumatic experience when a serial killer actually does stalk and attempt to kill her early in the movie. John Amiel directs those early scenes really well and provides the needed tension. Even though we know it's coming, it's still a shock what the killer pulls off. By the way, that murderer is played by Harry Connick Jr., who I did not recognize, as he managed to discard the charm usually associated with his other roles and depicts the delight he gets at trying to strangle Helen. Meanwhile, Sigourney Weaver also does a great job of playing Helen and showing that change from the confident speaker in the opening scene to this woman scared of leaving her apartment. However, the film, for the most part, does not do away with her tough personality and appears to present a respectful take on agoraphobia. I tried to find information on how accurate the depiction of agoraphobia is in Copycat, but it came up short in my Google search, with a few pages saying it was accurate and a few other people calling it unrealistic. Something that stood out to me about the scenes in Helen's apartment is the way the movie uses computers at the time. It's a fascinating portrait of mid-90s internet, though obviously made to fit what the screenwriters wanted the story to do. Helen is probably the fastest internet connection in town, for how quickly she's able to download files and do other things. She even manages to have a video conversation from her apartment to the prison with pretty decent picture quality. The new serial killer trying to torment Helen also does some impressive things from his 90s era computer and internet. Where I think the film is less interesting were the storylines with the two detectives. Holly Hunter plays Inspector Monaghan, and she does fine enough in the role, but I otherwise felt she was rather one-note, and I found my interest waning during her scenes. Same goes for partner Ruben, played by Dermot Mulroney. The film attempts to foster a connection between these characters, but I just did not buy into their growing partnership, and when we have long stretches where it's focused on these two and Weaver's off screen, I just waited patiently for the story to cut back to her. There's even a scene that comes right out of nowhere and mostly seems to exist to get one of them out of the way because the plot needs that to happen. I actually found some of the police officers in this movie to be not very good at their job. It's not unusual to see incompetent police in movies for the sake of the story, but they make some decisions here that are quite frustrating. As for the main serial killer they're trying to locate, he's okay, although not too intimidating. However, the idea of him being completely unoriginal and just basing his murders on previous famous serial killers is a solid one and goes to show the danger of highly publicizing these sorts of crimes. In this day and age, where true crime is now seemingly this money-making enterprise with frequent podcasts and Netflix documentaries about the subject, it does make one think about the possible influence on other serial killers. Yes, it can be interesting to read about people like Ted Bundy and the Boston Strangler or watch movies about them, but there's always that risk of someone being unfortunately inspired by them and their infamy. Copycat does eventually become a chase movie as the protagonists start to put the pieces together. The direction the plot goes in also somewhat requires Helen to turn into a bit of a damsel in distress. Interesting enough, the film originally had a different ending, which test audiences did not respond well to. In that cut, Monaghan becomes the damsel in distress and eventually shoots the serial killer in a move that test audiences found ridiculous. The producers would bring in Frank Darabont to write a new ending, which they then had to reshoot. I can understand why they chose to change the ending, although I feel like the one with Monaghan getting kidnapped could have worked with some slight tweaking. Overall, I do think Copycat is at its strongest when the focus is on Dr. Hudson and her attempting to solve the murders from her apartment. Funnily enough, this movie would later be compared to the book The Woman in the Window in its film adaptation, which is also about a woman with agoraphobia trying to solve a murder. Well, I think that one has more in common with Rear Window. Beyond that aspect of the plot, though, I found Copycat to be a fairly routine detective story and serial killer movie. Now, if you've seen the film, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for the request, Andrew.